Well, hello, this is Frank Zafiro, and this is the first of an ongoing series called Hump Day Readings. On these videos, I'll give you a quick unfiltered reading of some of my work. It'll vary what kind of work, and they'll be pretty short most of the time, so quick views. So today I thought I'd start at the beginning with my first novel, Under a Raging Moon. This is narrated in audio form by Michael Bowen, published by Books in Motion. He did a fantastic job. He reminds me of Peter Coyote a little bit with his voice. It's distinct in the same kind of way. Anyway, so I thought I'd read the beginning of this book, including the prologue. Just without further ado, here we go. Under a Raging Moon from, originally published in 2006. The dedication on this novel is for every officer who ever had the courage to wear a badge and to honor it. And I wasn't being very original at the time when I came up with the quote that I used at the beginning of the book. It is, people sleep peaceably in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. And that's by George Orwell. At the same time, while it might not be very original, it really captures the truth of law enforcement. It's not always the case, clearly, but sometimes that is the job of the law enforcement officer, to make people feel safe because they're willing to do the things that they themselves maybe aren't or can't. And sometimes that means violence, unfortunately. And that's really what this series is all about. It's about showing the human side of law enforcement, and that's what I try to capture with the characters. So anyway, we're going to read the prologue, which is dated from fall of 1994. So what do you want from me, Doc? I want you to tell me how you feel about what happened. The police officer snorted. It doesn't really matter what I say. The doctor leaned back in his chair before answering. He studied the man across from him. The officer sat in a relaxed position, his feet crossed at the ankles. Both hands lay across his lap. The doctor saw the bandaged arm and shoulder and a leg brace, as well as the cane leaning next to the officer, all evidence of the injuries he had sustained. He noticed none of the defensive body language he usually encountered in interviews such as this one. The officer appeared physically fit, his muscles well formed even in a relaxed state. He met the doctor's gaze with a frank, even stare. No challenge resided in his eyes, but none of his inner thoughts were betrayed either. My wife calls that the cop look. Officer, please understand. The doctor spoke in a calm, open tone. I do not work directly for the department. I'm contracted to do an evaluation after a critical incident and render a professional opinion. And I am required to cooperate fully as a condition of employment. The officer smiled without humor. Failure to do so may result in suspension or termination. That's true, the doctor conceded. He tried a different tactic. But it may help you to talk about it. The officer shrugged, but said nothing. The doctor suppressed a sigh and leaned back in his chair. By force of habit, he opened the officer's personnel file. He had already reviewed it, of course. He always made a point to know as much as possible about his patients before he sat down with them. Nothing in the file indicated the man was much different from any other cop he'd interviewed. Still, he found police officers to be a pleasant distraction from his regular practice of rich, whiny men and women. Some cops were uncultured ex-jocks, but many had a combination of intelligence and culture blended with a blue-collar worker's outlook that fascinated him. Another aspect that made these interviews well worth his time was his examination of the effect of power on the individual. He only charged the city 40% of what he charged his civilian clientele. It only seemed fair since these interviews were fueling a paper he was writing for a psychiatric journal. What do they say about me in there? The officer asked, nodding toward the file. Lots of things, the doctor replied, unsure if he had detected sarcasm in the officer's voice or not. He glanced down at the file in front of him. It says you graduated third in your class at the academy. You've been a police officer for just over 3 years. And during that time, you've sustained no internal affairs investigations. During that time, you've had no sustained internal affairs investigations. I haven't read this for quite some time, if you can't tell. There have been 7 unsustained complaints, however. Other than that, your last performance review was very complimentary. Company man, the officer said. This time the sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable. The doctor looked up again and caught the officer's eye. He saw a flicker of emotion. It disappeared quickly, and he wondered if he had seen it at all. He closed the file and set it aside. Officer, I am required to fill out a general report regarding your mental and emotional fitness for duty. Obviously, a satisfactory response is as important as your physical recovery with regards to your return to full duty. At the words full duty, the officer winced slightly. The doctor pressed on. However, everything you say within the confines of this office is entirely confidential. By law, I cannot reveal it to anyone, nor can I be compelled to by any court. The officer narrowed his eyes. Totally confidential. Yes. The doctor watched as the officer processed the information. The officer remained silent for several moments. Finally, he said in a heavy whisper, Doc, you want to know the truth? I do. The truth is, it felt good. The doctor nodded. Go on. The officer didn't meet his eyes, but continued to speak. I did what I had to do, and I don't feel bad for that. He chewed his lip for a moment, then continued. See, that's the problem. I feel bad because I don't feel bad about it. I feel good about it. I'd do it again. The doctor raised his hand to his glasses, adjusting them on the bridge of his nose. He gave the officer a reassuring nod. Now the session had truly begun. So that's the prologue of Under a Raging Moon. It's the first book in my River City series, and I actually started writing that book back in about 1995. It was first published in 2006, and then republished in 2010, and then republished again in 2017. Small presses have a way of going out of business sometimes. And the 5th book in the series will be coming out later this year. I'm hoping May, but we shall see. And I hope you enjoyed this. We'll be doing this every Wednesday, short little clips of something I've written, and it will be Hump Day readings. Until next time, keep reading.